Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming in a new Baldurs Gate build video. Today we have an awesome, very silly and very effective build concept that is control. Maximum control. We're essentially reducing or entirely stopping all incoming damage even when faced by strong as hell enemies or just big groups of them. With spells like Sanctuary, we can become entirely immune during that process. It's all thanks to the potent control spells like Command, Banishment, Hypnotic Pattern, Polymorph, and more. It's strong enough to trivialize the threat of even the most dangerous enemies in the game, so potent, in fact, that we can control even the legendary resistant enemies, which is wild. It's achieved by having such an outrageous amount of spell save DC from your items to actually maximize the chance of success for your control attempts. This means when you cast your control spells, the enemy will need to successfully roll saving throws that are very high, like 19 or even natural 20s to avoid that control, which is very unlikely. The examples I have of this working would be, the legendary resistant to crowd control Sorcerer here, which is successfully seed easy, and then the hilarious amount of control you're going to find in general combat even with a pile of targets. You could totally stop their ability to fight, group hypnotizing, sleeping, disarming, and so on. And the idea here is really to have one party member run this concept. I'm using my main character for the sake of the video. Honestly, if you're running Gale or like the idea of running Gale in your party, he could be the perfect target for this build, making this one player in your party so effective at CC that the incoming threat is massively reduced. And while they're focusing on controlling everyone, the rest of the party just mops up. So yeah, it's very strong and it's very fun. I'd also like to thank today's sponsor, Raycon. This is the perfect sponsor for us. I actually own a pair myself and have for years, and I genuinely really recommend them. I remember the main thing I was unsure about is if they'd stay in when I was moving around, like on a run. They were my first wireless earbuds. In the years that I've been using mine, they have never fallen out. I've used them on runs, like I said, but when I'm at the gym, while I've been traveling on a train or in an airport on a plane, that's largely because of these gel tips they have, which fit in your ear perfectly. They actually send you multiple shapes and sizes to cover all their bases, so you can just pick the pair that fits you best. In regards to battery, I must charge them like once or twice a month. It's an easy 8 hours of playtime and 32 hours of battery life. And one of my favorite details is the way that you can control them. It's really convenient. Each earbud has a button in the middle of it, which if you press, you can do a variety of things, like turn the volume up and down, double press to pause or play the current song or thing you're listening to. If you triple press the right earbud, you get the next song, or vice versa on the left earbud. There's also noise isolation and awareness modes, meaning you can block out outside noise, but if you swap to awareness mode, which I used in an airport, it allows you to kind of hear the surroundings a lot clearer at the same time, which was great for hearing announcements in a busy place like an airport. With school being back in session then, Raycon's having their annual back to school sale, so it's a perfect time to pick them up. 20% off site-wide with free shipping for a limited time. Get your own pair and support us and the channel at the same time by clicking the link in the description box down below, or just go to buyraycon.com/RageGamingVideos. But yes, we have our control concept, this potent mix of Sorcerer and Cleric, but we should now explain how it's actually working. So let's begin. We begin with our leveling as always, which begins with Cleric, but this is a mix of Cleric and Sorcerer to be specific. We're going to want to be a Cleric of Knowledge though, because that comes with the spells Command, which is obviously a vital component of this control-based build, but then also the benefits of, say, Sleep, which in an early game version of this build is going to be nice and strong. In regards to your starting ability points then, we're going to want to max out on Charisma and Wisdom as much as we can, getting 17 in Charisma, 16 in Wisdom. Under that, we want 12 Intelligence just to reach the +1 modifier from that. Constitution and Dex can be at 10. Once we've got our first level into the Cleric and we've got the proficiencies and everything from that to get going, it's time to multiclass. We're going straight into Sorcerer, and that's going to be the rest of the levels all the way to level 12. So 11 in Sorcerer and just 1 in Cleric. Of the subclasses, it doesn't really matter that much, so I guess it's whatever you prefer, but I like the idea of the draconic bloodline just because you get some nice passives for resilience, especially when not wearing gear, and anything that can help us stay alive is obviously going to be helpful. A big part of why we're taking Sorcerer though is of course going to be meta magic to empower our spells and be able to hit more targets ultimately with this CC. For your level 1 spells, it's pretty much whatever you prefer to use, but we'll actually care about what we take at level 2 and above, starting at level 2 where we actually reach our first one, Hold Person, which is indeed a concentration spell, but the person that you're concentrating on holding means you can go melee that person for a guaranteed critical hit, which is obviously very strong. For our first meta magic picks, I like Twinned and Extended just to to, lengthen how long things last and maybe multiple hit targets. And then on your next choice, it's pretty hard. Being able to cast when you're silenced is obviously really good. Being able to cast an extra spell because you put it to a bonus action is really good. And heightened's also good. So we want all of these really. For our first feat, we're going to push our wisdom to 18 to get it to our next modifier. And I would note in a full playthrough that you'd push your charisma to 18 as well, using Ethel's hair in Act 1 for that permanent one single point that you get from that, resulting in 18 wisdom and 18 charisma. When we get to level 5 in Sorcerer, we'll get our level 3 spell slot unlocked, so now we can actually get into the thick of it. Slow is a great pick because we can slow up to 6 enemies at once, meaning they're much easier to deal with, though this is indeed a concentration spell. You're also going to want Hypnotic Pattern, which is going to hypnotize creatures that can see the pattern, and not only can they not attack you, but they can't move or act for 2 turns. Also concentration, probably one of the main ones you'll use for AoE control. We're also going to want Counterspell because there's going to be a few spells that are going to be problematic when cast at us by another caster, so shutting these down is going to be very important. At level 7 in Sorcerer, we'll get the next spell slot level for level 4. Here we definitely want to consider Polymorph, hard CCing at least one target, turning them into a sheep, and the all-important Banishment, banishing your target to another plane of existence for 2 turns, and if you upcast it, it can even become AoE. Once we reach level 8 in the Sorcerer, we can get our second feat, where we're definitely going to want Alert so that we're never surprised. We always have initiative. This means we always go pretty much the start of any turn in most cases, and that means we have that chance to, well, control everything, to take complete control of a fight before it even begins. So this feat is obviously pretty important. At Sorcerer level 9, you'll get your 5th level spell, at which point you could consider the very potent Dominate Person, forcing someone to fight alongside you, which can be quite interesting, especially if they're particularly strong. While you're controlling everyone and CCing everything, you can have them fight alongside you in the meantime. And also at this level, you might want to consider Hold Monster, just for a more ability to actually hold more types of enemies. And Telekinesis can also be quite useful. Since we're not going to be using direct attacks really in this build on this specific party member that's using this, Telekinesis can be your way to insta-kill people by throwing them off ledges and so on. Finally, we reach our full level of 1 in Cleric and 11 in Sorcerer. This brings us to our 6th level spell slot, which can be used for upcasting of what we've already got, because to be honest, a lot of these spells aren't going to be that useful to the control concept, but of course this one's up to you. So, how do we actually get this to work in terms of gear? In terms of items you're wearing, of course, I'm going to show you kind of a more idealized, specific set of gear. But what you really need is anything that has this on it. +1 whatever to your spell save DC. As it says, certain spells require enemies to make a saving throw. The higher your spell difficulty class through spell save DC and other benefits, the harder it will be to resist your spells. As you can see, we have a kind of base DC roll, then we get some more from proficiencies, and then we're getting an absolute pile from our gear in the form of arcane enchantments and more. When you're playing this game, you will find items that have spell save DC improvers, and that's what you're going to be looking for, anything to do with that. But naturally, what I'm going to show is the best stuff found in Act 3 and beyond, but there are a couple items here from Act 2, for example, and there are alternatives even to these items. Let's work our way from the top to the bottom, starting with the Hood of the Weave. This has arcane enchantment +2 bonus to your spell save DC and spell attack rolls. We care about the bonus to the spell save DC, so obviously that's why we're wearing it, having just explained that. Also a theme here, Cloak of the Weave provides the same thing but with a +1 rather than a +2, and it comes with Absorb Elements. Absorb element damage once per short rest, taking half damage from the next element attack targeting you. Not something that will come up often, but it's nice to have the option. Then the Robe of the Weave, so there's the chest piece, getting another +1 to the spell save DC, and it also comes with Weave Eater. Whenever the wearer succeeds a saving throw against a spell, they just get some health back. Oh, and it provides 2 AC, which is very nice. All of these come from Act 3 pretty early on. You can literally just buy the hood and the cloak easily from a couple vendors in the Baldurs Gate lower city, whereas the chest piece comes from stealing it from the Sorcery Sundries area, where you also get that legendary staff. Next is a big one, the Gauntlets of the Tyrant, which comes with high spellcasting, gaining a +1 bonus to your spell save DC, and that's where we're getting that more powerful, more potent version of command, the 1 use per long rest, that I'll mention in a moment in the gameplay guide. This obviously comes from a certain tyrant, a main character, and a big decision to make at the end of the game, so you might not want to go for this specific piece of gloves. Alternatively though, you could consider the Hell Dust gloves, since they also have a +1 bonus to spell save DC. Like I've been saying, there are alternatives to the stuff we're wearing. Then we have our weapon, the Staff of Spell Power, which comes from the House of Hope. Not only does it come with Arcane Battery, meaning our next spell can actually not cost a spell slot, which is very nice, but it comes with a +1 bonus to spell save DC. You could also consider the legendary staff that does the same thing. Now you'll notice I'm actually wearing a shield. This is because we're a human, but also I believe Cleric allows you to do this, and this just comes down to this specific shield that provides the +1 bonus to spell save DC through its arcane enchantment. It also comes with shield bash, so if you actually get attacked, you can reaction try to knock an enemy prone, which is going to be quite useful. Obviously though, this is Ketheric Thorm's shield, so this is an Act 2 item. Then we have the Amulet of the Devout, which is a funny one. It's +2 bonus to spell save DC, which is obviously really good, and it does have God's Will, which is a very strong thing, but not really relevant to this build, and this comes by no small cost. Next to me is a hireling that I have used to take the permanent debuff, the curse, castigated by divinity, immediately killing them if they fall unconscious. Basically why this has happened is I had them steal the amulet, which has permanently debuffed them in that crazy way. So all I did was go to Withers, get a hireling, and have them go steal the amulet for me, then just push them out of the group and never think about them again, mitigating that permanent debuff. So that's my advice if you're going for that amulet. The last relevant thing is going to be the Ring of Mental Inhibition. It's not actually that vital. It just means when a foe fails a saving throw against one of spells, they gain mental fatigue for 2 turns, adding a penalty to the Wisdom, Intelligence, and Charisma saving throws for all their remaining turns, just making it harder and harder for them to ever not be CC'd. But that's the gear that I'm using, and a few alternatives and suggestions. When it comes to our gameplay guide, let's just quickly talk about Command and Sanctuary and how these should be generally used and things to know about them. Command is actually going to be really important in this build because you're going to get it immediately, and it's going to be one of your strongest, most relevant kind of control abilities the whole way. And all of them have interesting uses. We have 2 versions of Command here. A level 3 enchantment spell that actually doesn't cost a spell slot, is usable once per long rest, and then the one that costs level 1 spell slot. So just be aware of the difference between the two. But when you press it, you have your options. We have Approach, we have Drop, we have Flee, we have Grovel, and Hold. If you choose to upcast this spell, then what it does is it means you can actually target multiple targets and more for every spell slot spent. So using Command, you can actually target, 6 enemies at once you reach your 6th spell slot or whatever spell slot you're actually at for the number of targets, which is pretty cool. What's incredible then on top of that is, there's no concentration tied to this where, an AoE of that nature or control of this strength would normally require concentration. So this really forms the core of the playstyle. To open a fight then, it's a great idea to start with Hypnotic Pattern. This is a AoE kind of control spell that we talked about that does require concentration by comparison, but those effective cannot attack you or can't move or act. This followed up by a command the next turn. You could use something like Grovel on, say, up to 6 targets at once, but if you combine that with Quicken Spell, your meta magic, it'll cost a bonus action, which means you can do it twice in 1 turn. At maximum level, that could be 6 targets forced to Grovel, which when Quicken Spell means you get to do another, and then we'd have a 5th spell slot ready to go immediately to do another 5 targets. Technically, this means you could force 11 targets to Grovel in 1 turn. Grovel forces the creatures to fall to prone, which leaves them obviously vulnerable and really exposed to damage that the rest of your party can be dealing. So out of all of them, Grovel is the one you're probably going to use the most. However, Drop is also going to be really good if there's a particularly strong enemy with a very strong weapon. You can cause it to be disarmed, and with the way that we can upcast this, we can do that to multiple targets if we desire. So Command's pretty good. What about Sanctuary? You or an ally cannot be targeted until you attack or harm a creature. You can still take damage from area spells, or certain control spells can still target you, so be aware of that, but it does make you immune to most damage types. Since it only costs a level 1 spell slot as well, you can cast this quite often, and it's a bonus action, so cast it on yourself or an ally, whatever you need in the moment. As it says, it will break when you attack or harm a creature, but what's interesting about this is there are many control types of spells that don't count as an attack, so Sanctuary won't break. So you could maintain totally immune to damage while still controlling enemies in the fight. So I've put a pile of pink spells together to showcase this. Let's say I've just cast Sanctuary. I can still cast Sleep, which would be an early game version of this, right? Or Banishment, or say Hypnotic Pattern. You can Polymorph, or slow enemies. This all works without you actually breaking your Sanctuary, remaining completely immune to any damage, or most damage rather, for 10 turns. So those are some cool details to do with Command Sanctuary and the control abilities we have, but really the way this plays out is up to you depending on the scenario you're in. If there are many targets, as I've outlined, you'd want to make sure you use Hypnotic Pattern on as many as you can in one go, and you could Meta Magic Quicken spell to get another go immediately and then use something like Command, most likely using Grovel and upcasting it to cause multiple targets to grovel. In one singular turn then, you could control every single enemy in a fight easily. To be honest, there's not really going to be many scenarios where you need to control 11 targets at once to begin a fight, but the thing is, you can if you need to, which is nuts. Once your Hypnotic Pattern runs out then, which is going to be obviously your concentration, you can get more specific with your control. Be aware you can only use one concentration at a time as always, but you could use Telekinesis to throw some of those controlled enemies off a ledge easily. You could polymorph a specific scary target or AoE slow a bunch so they're having a really hard time ever reaching targets. Maybe your whole person or whole beast on a specific enemy that you want your team to absolutely smash with guaranteed crits. And ideally, you'll be doing this entirely while still in your own Sanctuary, preventing anyone from ever really doing anything to you. Chances are you'll be using your meta magic most often on Quicken spell to allow for a multi-cast per turn sort of situation. And while everything is absolutely dominated, controlled and CC'd, your party just goes to work and cleans up. With that kind of said, I don't think there's much to say in the conclusion. I would strongly recommend you give it a try, and generally, hopefully this helps you understand the potency of the Command spell and Sanctuary, especially when used in combination. You could easily run this on one of your party members, whether that's Gale or maybe even Shadowheart, if not your own unique main character. Who needs heals when the enemies can barely deal or literally cannot fight at all? But for now, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Until next time then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.